That's it. That's Xenoblade. Xenoblade Chronicles. Wow. Streaming 6.5 hours. Alright. Guess I should do a little review. Yeah, let's do a little review. Close it up. Um, Xenoblade Chronicles is a great game. I don't think I love it nearly as much as some other people do. Like, I think it's a good game. Maybe even great, but I don't think it's like absolutely amazing. And the reason for that is pertains to the story. But before I get into that, I guess I should gush over, what I do like about the game. For a Wii game, and considering how few RPGs there are for the Wii, like this is by far the best RPG there is on the Wii. And anyone who loves RPGs and has a Wii should get this game. The graphics are really amazing. The fact that you're on these giant titans, the whole game takes place on that is amazing. And the open world, exploring and things like that is great. Yeah, I mean, occasionally you'll see some, kind of drab areas, but, that's kind of par for the course when it comes to any kind of large game. There's inevitably going to be places that look better than others. But I think more often than not, you're going to be, like, just blown away by how gorgeous the game looks. And I'm playing it on composite, on standard definition, and it still looks great. I'm sure it looks even better if you play it on component, or maybe if you can play it on high definition on an emulator or whatever. It would look even better. The gameplay is really what keeps it fun for me. Usually I prefer action RPGs, and I know some people consider this an action RPG, but it does have there's no attack button, and I really do think like an attack button is necessary for it to count as an action RPG. Otherwise, you have to consider Dragon Age, Neverwinter Nights, and Baldur's Gate, and games like that, KOTOR, as action RPGs too. It has a real-time combat system, but I don't consider it an action RPG. But there's good reason for that, because there's still strategy and a lot of skill involved in the game to play well. And even if you aren't very high level, you can still do well if you know what skills to use, what gems to attach, what order to use them in the combo tags. Like it's a very, very deep game. There's so much to learn about it. And it's very satisfying, and it's very fun to just do battle and kill things. And it's a very long game, so if you love it, you're going to really enjoy it. The story is kind of the mixed bag for me. I thought the beginning of the story is very slow. And so it's hard for me to really get into it, because the story does take a long time for it to really speed up. The main story is pretty epic, though. It is great, actually. When you stick with it throughout the entire 60 plus hours, it's a good main story. It's pretty strong, and it hits all the right parts to what makes a great story, But what I thought was a little lacking was the character development, or making, like, really what makes a good video game have a good story for me is the subplots and experiencing the characters and their issues. Like, there wasn't much about that. It was more about just the characters. It was just the main story. That's all it was. So there weren't any real subplots. And so because of that, since there aren't a lot of subplots, there isn't a lot of character development. I mean, the character development was there to facilitate the main story. It was, we gotta save the world. That's what the story is. We gotta save the world, and we can interact with each other along the way, but it didn't explore some of the subplots that it introduced, like Sharla and Rhine, their relationship, or Melia and Shulk, They could have explored that a little bit more and made the characters more imperfect. That's the thing I don't like about these kind of like JRPGs. Sometimes the characters are too perfect. They don't have enough imperfections, enough problems. They could have easily had like a love triangle between Charla, uh, Ryan, and whatever his name is, that guy who died. It's like they could have easily explored that a little bit more and turned Ryan into like a jealous a-hole, if they wanted to. And it would have actually made depth because then he could have been an asshole at first and then, learned, what? This isn't about me and, my selfish desires. This I should do the right thing in the end. They could have done something like that. Um, and they could have done a similar thing with Melia and, there could have been problems. And that's what makes things interesting for people to act human. Not the main quest, because the main quest is too alien. It's too weird. The main quest is a MacGuffin. Because if you think about it, us saving the world, we could have saved the world from anything. It didn't have to be about these gods and whatever. It could have been we gotta save the world from a giant toaster that's about to, step on everyone or whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, what matters is the journey there and all the problems, trials, and tribulations along the way. And like if they started out the game with that, it would have been even better and continued it. It would have been so much more satisfying and interesting because those kinds of subplots, they compel you. You want to learn more about them. You want to learn more about the characters. That's what the story should really be about, not the main story. That's just there, you know, to give them excuse to go on an adventure, you know. So that's really my only gripe. That and also I thought the game was a little bit long. Um, it's 60 plus hours. That's on the long side for any kind of game. But even by RPG standards, it's a little long. Um, and I have to contrast that with like Persona 3 and 4, which were um they were really long games too, but they were different because they had all of those storyline elements that I talked about that kept you interested and compelled. Whereas with this game, it's just the main quest. There aren't any side stories or character development that we need to, think about or wonder about or we're sitting on the edge of our seat about. So it felt like it was dragging. I was kind of waiting for the game to be over. But like for people who love this game, and I will admit that, my opinion isn't quite in line with the people who absolutely gush over this game. And that's more of the mainstream opinion, and I'm sure they're totally okay with it being as long as it is. But it is pretty long, and you got to keep in mind that I didn't do much of the side stuff at all. You could easily sink in like 30 more hours or maybe even more into this game if you do all the side stuff. Um, but yeah, I just stuck to the main quest. Everything else about the game is great. The controls are great. I'm glad they didn't, mess around with motion controls, even though it was on the Wii. That was a good move. I played using the classic controller, and it makes good use of that. And I should mention the music before and it's fantastic. It really is great. This game, if I had to compare this to anything else, it reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy X. So like graphics, story, and the characters, even Rhine, he's like that Waka guy from Final Fantasy X. Shulk is like Tidus, and like very similar characters. I wonder if they were inspired by it. So I think that if you love Final Fantasy X, you would love this too. And that's all I gotta say. It's a great game. All right, so that's it.